Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
Welcome to episode 81 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, and a special welcome to all my Inner Circle members. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tim Topham, and I'm the teacher behind the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the piano teaching blog at timtopham.com, and the Inner Circle Piano Teaching community. My passion is supporting creative piano teaching through the sharing of innovative ideas, supporting teachers as they try new things, and ultimately to help you provide the richest, most exciting and fun learning experiences possible for your students. Today's show notes and a transcript are available at timtopham.com/episode 81. So today's the last day of March. I can't believe how quickly this year seems to be flying by. And this has been a month when we've explored teaching beginners and lesson planning. And we focused on that this month because I've been getting so many questions about it in the last 6 to 12 months. So I hope you've enjoyed the resources and discussions we've been having. We started the podcast this month with how to teach lead sheets and chord charts with Susan Dees. And this has been an incredibly popular episode. So much so, in fact, that we might just have to do some more focus on this in the coming months. And I know people will be excited to hear that. We then had my 5 tips for planning a piano teaching curriculum, which was linked to the blog post that I did that same week, in which I shared my weekly and quarterly lesson planning templates, all for free. You can download them right now if you haven't checked that out already. We then explored rote teaching with the fabulous Amy Greer. And finally, last week, Nicola Cantan shared her wisdom on beginning piano teaching games. So this week, I want to give you some concrete ways in which to plan your approach for teaching any piece of music to students once they've moved into reading repertoire. And this will lead us nicely into next week's theme, which is exploring exams and recitals. So we're kind of taking the beginner approach. We're now moving to, okay, so when your student has got to the point where they can actually learn a written piece of music, no matter how simple or difficult, what's the best approach for teaching that? And again, this episode comes from questions that I get from teachers who are unsure about the best approach. So let's hope that today I answer some of those questions. Now, I've got a fantastic freebie for today's episode. It's called My Elements and Activities one-page teaching framework. And this is going to show you all the ways that you can work out the elements and ingredients to create a piece of music, work out what's new for your student, and devise some activities around preparing the student to learn that piece. I'm actually going to take you through this little one-page framework today, and you'll be able to download that from timtopham.com/episode 81. So today we're talking about teaching pieces of music, and this is anyone from beginner onwards. So in Australia, pre-preliminary people just out of a method book, when they're starting to learn pieces. The old process, I think, was that for many of us, we would sit down with our student next to us, we would sit at the piano, and we would demonstrate a whole lot of music. Students would choose a piece they like, and we'd give them the music that day quite often and say, all right, start learning this week. And oftentimes, we would do this at the end of a lesson or without much time to actually give the student any preparation. Now, I've been guilty of this myself, so I'm putting my hand up to admit first time, I've done this and I know it's not the right way to do things. And I think anytime any of us do this, we know it's not the right way to approach it, because we're, of course, giving students this fantastic, exciting new music that we've just demonstrated and that they really love the sound of. And then they're going home and they're just getting frustrated by it because we haven't actually prepared them to learn it. So we've got to work more effectively at preparing students for these things, these new pieces. So the result, of course, of this is that, well, 1, they'll get frustrated. 2, they're likely to come back with a whole lot of mistakes. And oftentimes these are mistakes which could have been avoided. So I want to change this process today and help you plan a way in which you can prepare students most effectively for learning a new piece of music. And as I say, it doesn't matter if this is really, really elementary music or students that are doing grade 5, 6, 7, or 8. We should be helping students prepare for what they're about to learn before we just throw it at them. So why is it that this old method of just giving students new music for a week doesn't work? Actually, before we do that, let's ask, why do we do it? And I think the answer is, the reason I've done it before is that there's two reasons. We run out of time. And the second thing is we don't think far enough ahead. So it's about lesson planning. And that's why I wanted to remind you about some of those earlier blog posts and podcasts from this month, because I talk about that there. It's important that we actually plan when we're approaching new music with any of our students. The other thing is the lack of time. And, quite often in a lesson, particularly as students get to upper grades, high level, late intermediate, early advanced kind of level, if we demonstrate some music for them in a lesson, a 30-minute lesson, hopefully they're not having 30-minute lessons, even a 40-minute lesson, a lot of the lesson time can be taken up by us demonstrating music and them choosing what they would like to play. So I think there's a better way to approach that. One simple way to fix that issue of having to demonstrate music for students and getting them to choose what they like is, as I've said before in, I think, a previous podcast, certainly on the blog, record the pieces or create a playlist in YouTube of other people playing the pieces, the selection, and send them home to look at a playlist on YouTube and just create a playlist. It could be grade 5 classical piano pieces. And in there's 20 different pieces and they have to choose 3 of them or 4 or 5, whatever it is. That is the best way, the most efficient way to utilize your time. And do this three weeks or thereabouts before you're actually wanting to start these new pieces with a student. Hopefully you're not starting 5 or 6 new pieces at the same time, of course. Hopefully it's all staggered through the year. But do this a number of weeks beforehand so that you can then find the music and start preparing the student to learn it. I think one of the other things that we tend to do as well is that we often move too fast. We push students, once they've learned something, one piece of music, to suddenly learn something that's much harder, or even a little bit harder. And it was fantastic having a chat with Paul Harris, which I shared with you on the blog on the 13th of March this year, when he talked about let's not make things harder for students. So I quote him. He says in this chat, which you can watch on my blog, he says, let's do lots more pieces that are not more difficult so that students can learn quickly, enjoy the sensation of playing a whole piece, they understand the ingredients, and they then build up momentum. So this was in response to talking about exams and students being on what I call the exam express, just exam year after exam year and harder music until they get to the finish of the exams and can't wait to stop because it's been such an ordeal to get there. Thankfully, this doesn't happen everywhere in the world, but I know in certain places and countries it does, Australia being one of those places. So it was fantastic to hear such a noted educator say, let's give them lots of pieces at that same level to reinforce those skills. And it's the kind of thing that many teachers are now exploring in running things like 20, 30, and 40 piece challenges for their students, where you give your students many, many pieces at nice, easy levels, even easier sometimes than the level they're working at the moment, to give them that repetition of things that they already know so they can play with more confidence. So let's move forward and have a look at how we could do all this better. And I've actually got a 3-step process, and it's pretty straightforward. And what I've done is I've based this idea around the simultaneous learning concept of Paul Harris. So I've taken his idea, and I'll explain what that is in a moment if you haven't heard about it, and put it into a workable framework that you can use on any piece. And as I say, it's just a 1-page download where you kind of fill in boxes. It's absolutely brilliant. I've been using it myself, and I think it'll be really, really helpful in your teaching. Again, if you want to grab this download freebie, head to timtopham.com/episode 81. So what is the 3-step process? Well, firstly, you'll need to start this around 2 to 3 weeks before you'd normally assign a piece to a student. And this is a really important thing to consider. And this is where planning becomes crucial, because I know that a lot of times I'll suddenly realize that, oh my goodness, I need a new piece of music for this student that's coming in today. And bang, it's like it's all just happening in front of me. Do you ever feel that? Whereas what I should have done is realized, actually, James has got a lesson in 3 weeks. I know he's going to need some music then, or as long as he achieves everything that he should have. I should be starting to plan for that, him learning that new piece right now, and starting to introduce him to some of the new elements of that music. So this is where we've got to change our mindset a little bit and think a little bit further ahead than most people. Now, of course, I'm talking from my experience. You might be one of those, a teacher that plans well in advance, and might be going, well, why don't you do that already, Tim? If that's you, fantastic. You are on the ball. But I have a feeling that I'm not alone in being caught up in that last minute, oh, we need some new music, quick, open up the filing cabinets and grab the shelves and right, here we go, let's start something new. So let's do it better. Let's start 2 or 3 weeks out. And here's my 3-step process. Step 1, find the elements of the piece. Find all those things that make up the piece of music as far as rhythm and melody and chords, harmony, patterns, form, cadences, scales, arpeggio, key, harmony, articulation, dynamics, all of these things, they're all elements. Paul Harris in Simultaneous Learning calls them ingredients. So think of the music as a meal, and the recipe is the score, and the ingredients are those parts of the score that make up the recipe. And I'm actually going to take you through an example of this in action in just a moment. So that's step 1, find all those elements. Step 2, work out what is going to be new information for your student. For that particular student, what don't they know yet out of those things? So if the piece of music uses a polyrhythm or some unusual pattern or a scale they've never learnt or a new meter, then that's the new information that you need to prepare your student for. Step 3 is to devise a series of activities, and they don't have to be difficult or complex, but you need to cover them. Devise a series of activities that prepares the student for learning and engaging with these new elements. And that way, when you finally give them the piece of music, you'll be able to point to things, or they'll even be able to see things in the music that they already understand and know. And this is the beauty of this simultaneous learning approach. You prepare the student by working out all these elements, and then you help them understand how to approach these in learning the new piece before they've even seen the music. So this 3-step process happens before the student has seen the music. You've seen the music and you've prepared from it, but they haven't yet. So that's the 3-step process: finding the elements, working out what's new information for that particular student, and this will change for every student, and devising a series of activities that prepares the student for the new elements. Now, the great thing about the 1-page framework that I've created for you is that there are boxes that guide you through each of these sections. So there's a box for key and harmony, a box for rhythm, a box for melody, a box for chords, a box for patterns, etc. at the top half of the page. The lower half of the page has similar boxes, and that's designed for the activities that you could create that suit those elements. Right in the middle is a box in the middle of the page that says, what's new for this student? And that's where you're going to work out what you've actually got to teach that's new for this student. So the great thing about this, and I've actually included a completed version of my 1-page framework on the show notes page. The great thing is that you could potentially leave that box in the middle, the what's new for this student box, blank, and have the rest of the page filled out for the main pieces that you quite often teach. So you've already worked out the elements. You don't need to do this for every piece every time you teach it. You only need to do this once. And you can keep a record of this, keep a photocopy of this sheet, and then in the middle, work out what's new for that student. Decide then what out of the activities that you've created at the bottom of the page would work for them. So you've kind of got 2 approaches there. You could fill out the whole sheet except the middle section. So you could fill out all the elements, and you could fill out a whole lot of different activities and then decide which of those activities you want to do with your student. Or you could just complete the elements section, and then once you know what your student needs to learn, you can devise the activities. Up to you how you want to use it. But again, I've left an example there for you to have a look at. All right, so let's actually go through this now. I've got the piano behind me, so it might sound a little bit distant, but what I'm actually going to use is Bergmüller's Ballade, which is the one that just about everyone teaches at some stage. It goes like this. Okay, and I think most piano teachers would know that one. They might be sick of that one, but it's an absolute winner for students. They totally love it. It's great for storytelling, and it's great for technique. There are lots and lots of great little technical challenges in it. So I would highly recommend it if you haven't used it before. This is Opus 100, number 15, Bergmüller. So for the top section of this page, I've got a number of boxes, as I said. So the key and the harmony of this is C minor and also C major. One of the rhythmic elements is obviously, which is just 3 quavers in 3/8, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we've also got the ticka 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 tick, the semiquavers in the left hand. So there's 2 little rhythmic patterns. We've also quite often got the pattern of a quaver and then quaver rest and then another quaver. Da, 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 da. The form, we've got A, B, A and a coda, and the B section moves into C major. We've got the pulse, which is 3/8. And obviously a number of articulations and dynamics. We've got sforzando, pianissimo, we've got cadences, arpeggios, and there's a few other bits as well. So they're the elements, and I've filled them out at the top of the page. Now, when I was most recently teaching this to my student, in the What's New for this Student box, the most obvious and important thing, and this often happens, I think, in music, particularly if you're playing something in 3/8 or 6/8 or 5/4 or 7/8, some slightly unusual or less used time signatures, the thing that's new for this student is 3/8. So what I need to do is create a number of activities that will help him understand 3/8, to feel the pulse, and to understand how the patterns work in that pulse. So some of the activities could be, maybe they're conducting with a light sort of arm bounce in a 3/8 pattern in the air. Maybe they're 1 or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Maybe they're tapping. Maybe they're keeping a beat with their foot while they count the beats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You get the idea. I don't need to tell you how to create activities, I don't think, for helping a student understand a new time signature. But that's crucial. And filling out this one-page sheet has allowed me to realize, I need to do some work for James, or whoever it is, on 3/8, at least a couple of weeks out, before we give him this piece. Otherwise, that's going to be a massive hurdle. He's not going to understand it. So we could do some tapping, clapbacks. We could vocalize the rhythm. We might want to do the da, 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 da rhythms, and perhaps alternate between the da, 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 da. Or maybe the left hand, which has got the ticka, 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 da, da, da. Da, ticka, 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 da, da, da. We could do some vocalizations or tapping around that. Again, that's taking the elements, the patterns, and helping him understand it. One of the other great things to do too, once you've started devising activities around these elements, is to include a session or part of a session where the student either writes down the pattern so they know, they can recognize it on the score, or that they look at examples of it in musical notation. Because what's going to be great is when, I'm just going to use James for this example, James opens up the score and sees the series of 6 semiquavers in the left hand, this thing. And he goes, I know how that pattern goes. That's really, really easy. We could even do the melodic pattern of that and ask him, where does that happen in this piece of music when he first sees it? And it happens, of course, right at the beginning, the return of the A section, and then the coda does it in both hands. So that gives you some ideas of the kinds of activities that we could do. It might be that this is a new key for James. Maybe he's never played in C minor before. So it would be great to do some chord work in C minor, learning the primary triads, perhaps in a few inversions, and also learning the C minor scale. I always think learning the scale of a key of a piece of music that a student's going to learn is always a good idea before they start learning it, because they start thinking in terms of the key the more they know that scale. Perhaps that they could practice the arpeggios. There's an arpeggio around bar 24 that goes... And perhaps they could do some practice of moving in arpeggios and then having a look at what that looks like on the notation. And of course, when we've got arpeggios that are simple broken triads in root position, we've got notes that move either space, 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 or line, line, line. So it'd be great for them to be able to recognize them and go, that's just a chord. Oh, it's broken up. Oh, it's an arpeggio. Easy, I can play that. And perhaps doing some work with C minor, playing some C minor chords in 3/8. Once they've got the idea of the 3/8 and how it sounds, maybe we could get them to play the right-hand chord. And they could even play the right-hand chord and do a scale in the left hand or something. Be inventive, be imaginative with these activities, but make sure that they're relevant and useful for whatever the student needs to learn how to do for this piece of music. So let me give you the kind of the steps I would take. Well, firstly, download this blank worksheet and try it out with just one piece of music that you regularly teach, and hopefully that a student might be looking to learn in the next few weeks. Step 1 is to go through the music and fill out the worksheet. Find the elements, firstly, and then work out what your student needs to learn, needs to know, so that you can devise some activities around it. About 2 weeks before starting the new piece, I'd start exploring those activities with the student. Then, a week later, have a listen to how well they've ingrained those activities and how well they're playing or tapping or counting or feeling, whatever it is, and assign a few new ones. And then the week of starting the new piece, you can actually show them bits of the music, and hopefully they can find those familiar elements, the things that they've been exploring. They can point to them in the music. They can look at 3/8 at the start and go, easy, I can do that. They can see the key signature and go, wow, totally cool. I know how to do that. Let's play a scale in C minor. Fine. They could look at the ending and not be completely terrified by all these semiquavers, because it's just that pattern that you showed me a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully we're really building up the students' knowledge and skills before they start learning the piece. And not only is this going to reduce the amount of errors that they come back with and the frustrations they'll have, they'll actually, hopefully, feel better about learning this new piece of music. It will give them the mindset of, I can do this. This reading thing, this is okay. I get this. And hopefully that will, in turn, enable them and encourage them to learn more music. And we'll do exactly the same thing with future pieces. Now, I know one of the big issues with this is, of course, that it takes time. It takes time in planning. You've got to think ahead, and it's a slightly slower process up front. But the great thing is, of course, that you're building those skills that will allow your student to make faster progress. So it will actually pay off in the end, but it will take a little bit of a mind shift and some preparation beforehand, particularly as you do it for the first time for each piece. And chances are, the more you do it, the better you'll get. Maybe you won't even need the framework in the end, but it is a great place to start if you've never explored this way of planning for effective teaching of a piano piece. So what do you think? Does that sound like it makes sense to you? Do you reckon you could add this into your planning time during a day to prepare your student for learning a new piece? Could you set aside that time to download the framework, have a look at it, and try it out with one piece and one student? I hope so, because I think it could be really, really positive and really, really productive for you and your student and your studio. All right, so let's quickly revise the 3-step process. So starting around 2 or 3 weeks before you'd normally give the student a piece in a lesson, step 1 is to find all the elements and ingredients of the piece and fill out each of the boxes in the top half of the framework. Step 2, work out what the student is going to find new or difficult. You'll only know that by knowing your students, of course, but you'll know where they're up to. So you'll know whether they've learnt something in 6/8 or 7/8 or something in a new key or with some funny rhythms or whatever it is. So preempt the kinds of things that they're going to have difficulty with and write it in that middle section. What's new? What are they going to find hard? What do I need to help them with? And then just devise a series of activities that prepares the student to overcome all those hurdles that you think they're going to have with this new piece of music. So, really easy 3-step plan. I do hope that you'll be able to use this in your teaching in the coming weeks. So in order to grab that freebie, head to timtopham.com/episode 81. And of course, you'll also be able to grab transcript and any links I've mentioned and any other information we've got on this topic too. So links to those other blog posts we'll put in the show notes so that you'll be able to link to those. If you're interested in the other lesson planning documents I've got, so that's the weekly lesson plan for a student and also the quarterly planning for students, which can really link in well with this because you're actually going to have to start thinking a little bit further ahead now. If you'd like to grab those, head to the show notes and we'll pop the links in there for you. Lastly, if you'd like to leave a review or if you've got a spare couple of minutes, I would really appreciate a review actually on Facebook. It's actually a better place for me to get reviews than on iTunes, I've realized. So you're welcome to leave reviews on iTunes for this, and you can find out about that at timtopham.com/iTunes. But if you're happy to leave a Facebook review, I would really, really love to read them. And you can do that by searching for my Facebook page. It's called Tim Topham Creative Piano Teaching, and there's a spot there to leave your thoughts. I would love to hear what you think and let me know about this episode too. Is it useful to you? Is it too much information? Is it easy? Is it doable? What do your students think? Let me know how it goes. You're welcome to leave a comment under the show notes. Thanks so much for listening today, and I can't wait to speak to you again in a week's time in episode 82.
Will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.